Greetings. Welcome to another segment with Bentley Bryant on werewolves.com, reading from the After Midnight section. One of my short tales. This one is one of the greatest escapes ever, part 3. Listen as we read a portion. Oscar, lowering himself to the pavement from the last stair, held on tightly to his remaining 7 food baggies. It was now in the wee hours of the morning, and the streets were buzzing with activity. Fortunately for Oscar, he was well hidden in the shadows, so no one noticed him, until he landed on the pavement. "Hey there, little buddy. What you got there in them baggies?" It was one of the neighborhood bums by the looks and smell of him. Oscar had just settled down on the pavement when this fool came running out of the shadows. Charging him, Oscar's only thought was, "No, you can't have my snacks." How rude. Placing himself between his food baggies and the bum, Oscar moved just fast enough to dodge the bum's outstretched hands. Spinning around, he grabbed the intoxicated bum by the back of his head and slammed him face first into the warm, damp pavement. The bum, still in that position, stayed there with blood pouring from under his face. Oh no, thought Oscar. He wasn't trying to hurt the bum, but he felt threatened and wasn't about to give up his food. And he didn't ask anyways. He was just going to help himself. Oscar was appalled at the nerve of this guy. This just might be a longer journey than Oscar had originally bargained for. Pulling the bum's stiffening body deeper into the shadows, he looked up to see the area he'd come from. It was a long ways up from where he stood, and despite the strange welcome he'd just experienced, he couldn't fathom going back. He was still happy about his decision to escape. Looking out across the street from around the side of the BCC building, and decided that maybe he should wait before making an attempt to get out there in the midst of the hustle and bustle. Most everyone out and about at this hour had already had a few too many drinks, so he'd be able to easily move down the street without attracting any unwanted attention. But he couldn't be too confident. The bum incident was evident that he couldn't get careless now that he was on ground level. His mistakes would equal humans getting hurt. He didn't want that. All of these thoughts combined with the normal anxiety of being free of the apartment made Oscar hungry again. Gobbling down his second bag of treats, Oscar did a close survey of his new temporary surroundings. A few yards down the street, he noticed an uncovered manhole that had been left unattended. It was well lit, with flashing orange lights, orange and white barricades, and orange caution tape. Now that he'd found his method of escaping into the sewer systems, he noticed a melodic sound coming from a building near the manhole. He recognized the sound to be music, jazz music. It was coming from Yazzy's Jazzy Spot, a nightclub located across from the BCC. He could hear the music coming from inside the club, and strangely it calmed him in a way nothing else had, including eating. He could hear the music coming from inside the club as he sat there for a while, mesmerized by the melodic sounds. Aurea's parents loved jazz and played it frequently in their apartment during the evening once Aurea was sound asleep, as not to disturb her. Her dad had a collection of vinyl that would make any record enthusiast envious. Her dad was a huge Miles Davis fan, while her mom loved Melody Gardot. Oscar was also a fan of both, but thought Melody Gardot's story was as remarkable as her gifts to the world of jazz. As the music continued to pulse from Yazzy's jazzy spot, he thought back to a time when he was totally happy being a part of Aurea's family. A tear fell as he listened through all of the outside noise and focused on the music. He actually felt the jazz flow through him. Finally, he decided that he'd better get moving in order to successfully make it to the manhole without being seen by humans. Without being seen, he'd have to create a disguise. After a brief search, he found a section of newspaper hanging onto one of the BCC drain pipes. Realizing that it could work, he grabbed it up and placed it over himself. Moving back and forth, he felt that it would be perfect. It would have been better if he had saved some of his food, but he had not. At this point, he couldn't afford to lighten his load, especially not knowing what he'd be eating as time progressed. The thought of that alone gave him anxiety more than the thought of being caught by a human. It was a bit of a challenge to crawl and hold on to his food baggies at the same time, but he didn't have a choice. After all, he was a natural multitasker. So it would have to just take some time getting used to. His appetite seemed to have increased since he left the apartment, which concerned him. He only had 6 food baggies left and wasn't sure how far he'd have to travel in order to reach his final destination. With everything ready to go, Oscar gently placed the newspaper over his entire body and slowly moved from within the shadows of the side of the BCC building. The manhole was quite a distance down the street, but if he kept a slow pace, stopping every so often in order to help blend in with his surroundings, he should make it there without interruptions or being discovered by humans. The traffic, which consisted mostly of cab cars, had slowed down, but the streets were still busy with foot traffic. It was becoming more and more evident that this city never slept. Thankfully, the manhole was surrounded by caution tape, barricades, flashing orange lights. Ironically enough, all of these things were in place to help ensure no one accidentally fell in. Oscar was determined to fall into the dark pit, knowing that he could maneuver quicker underground through the sewer system. Overjoyed that everything was finally happening, he made his way slowly down the sidewalk, staying close to the wall, which worked out to be the perfect backdrop. Pedestrians of the night barely noticed the paper as it blew past them on the ground. Other trash and debris along the city streets helped to camouflage Oscar as he skillfully moved a few feet at a time before stopping. He had been smart enough to fool Aurea's parents for a number of years, and he was smart enough now to know that a section of newspaper moving continuously down the street might create suspicion, and suspicion wouldn't be good for him in this setting. So he stayed his course. As he moved closer and closer to the manhole, the music continued to penetrate the air. Along the way, he encountered several vendors, and most of them seemed to be just hanging out since they had no customers. Sales ranged from cheesesteak subs to hot dogs and magazines. There was even a 24-hour flower shop. It had the most beautiful flowers Oscar had ever seen. If he had time, he would grab up 2 or 3 and take them back to the windowsill from whence he came. In his mind, a parting gift and a way of saying thank you to the only family he'd ever known. But having no idea what time it was or how much time had passed, he didn't want to take a chance of coming face to face with Aurea. She could be sitting at the window right now calling for him and crying, sad because he left. Another tear fell as Oscar looked up from beneath the paper at the flowers. Surprised that he was feeling so emotional, he shrugged it off and continued for the manhole. The barriers and caution tape deterred traffic on this section of the street as it was used to protect the integrity of the work being done in this area of the city. After a bit of a journey, Oscar made it to the edge of the barricades, moving under the caution tape, sliding easily into the opening of the manhole. The lights flashed continuously as he surveyed the bar steps that led down into the deep darkness. He couldn't see it, but he could hear and smell the water at the bottom of the pit. By the sound of it, the stream-like water barely moved along the bottom of the pit. Nevertheless, he was thirsty since he didn't bother to pack any water, as it would have only slowed him down. He was also feeling a bit dry, so the sound and smell of it made him quite happy. Reaching down, he grabbed the first bar step as the newspaper settled over the opening, creating a perfect camouflage. He continued down into the darkness, grabbing second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth bar step as he closed in on the bottom. Moving quickly, he was near the bottom by the time the newspaper had blown away, exposing the opening of the manhole. Within seconds, Oscar splashed down into the shallow water below. For him, this was the best feeling ever. By all accounts, the water was warm and yucky, but Oscar didn't mind it at all. He'd carefully placed his food baggies over to the side, all but one of them, because, yes, he was hungry again after his trek to this point of his journey. He splashed around in the water until he was exhausted, but not so much so that he couldn't eat. Gobbling down his third snack, leaving 5, laying there in the water, Oscar couldn't fight off taking a short nap before heading down the tunnel where more darkness awaited him. The noise of steel-toe boots scraping across the bar steps and voices woke him up from a deep sleep. It took him a second to recognize where he was and what was happening in relation to his whereabouts. Instinctively, he'd moved to a corner in the sewer as he watched 2 humans descend the bar stairs. Looking up at the opening, Oscar could see that the sun had long peered around the buildings of the city. He'd slept a lot longer than he'd originally planned to. And then it hit him. The humans must have been searching for him. Laying as still as he could, here in the depths, he continued to watch the humans as the first human stepped off the bar step and picked up his 5 food baggies. "Hey bro, check this out," the second human climbing off the bar step responded. "Hey, what you got there, bud?" Oscar could feel himself getting angry at the fact the first human was shaking and inspecting his snacks. He had carelessly left them sitting on the side of the sewer. Now the second human was joining in on the activities. The second human said, "Dude, I think we got a hold of some bum stash right here." "I know, right?" responded the first. "I bet you he's still down here somewhere, probably sleeping off a buzz." The second one flipped on his helmet headlight and started looking around in the immediate area. The first one didn't bother turning on his headlight because he was still checking out the food baggies. Oscar closed his eyes as the second human aimed his headlight directly at him. He could feel the brightness of the light pass over him down here in the darkness and remained as still as he possibly could. He even held his breath. Noticing something in the corner that didn't seem to fit the scene, the second human took a step or 2 closer and aimed his headlight back on Oscar. Hearing the second human scream, "What the hell is that?" was his cue. He opened his eyes and everything from that point seemed to go in slow motion.